Emily expected paw prints in the snow. What she found was a soaked wallet resting on the feeding rock. Inside, a man's ID, a man missing for 3 weeks. Left, it seemed, by the very bobcat she'd been feeding. But what happened next will shock even those who thought they'd seen everything. But first, let's go back to the beginning. The fog was thicker that day, clinging to the pines like a second skin. The world felt slower, muffled, like a held breath. Emily stood barefoot on the porch, coffee steaming in her hands, eyes fixed on the tree line. The usual unease she felt before the bobcat arrived was absent, replaced by a strange anticipation. But the rock was empty. No paw prints, no movement. Minutes dragged. She began to wonder if something had happened, if the thread of trust, so fragile and tentative, had snapped. Then, from the mist, 2 shapes emerged. Not one. 2. The bobcat, as usual, lithe, low to the ground, amber eyes unblinking, and behind her, stumbling awkwardly, a kitten. Smaller, with a twisted back leg that dragged slightly in the pine needles. Emily didn't breathe. The mother, she had to be a mother now, moved ahead and nudged the scrap of chicken with her nose. Then, shockingly, she stepped back. A gesture. The kitten limped forward, sniffed, and began to eat, chewing slowly, awkwardly, as if unused to such bounty. The mother kept her eyes on Emily the entire time, not menacing, not submissive, calculating. Emily knelt down slowly, placing her mug on the wooden boards, her movements fluid, non-threatening. She lowered her eyes for just a second, a silent show of deference, something she had read about wolves maybe, but which now felt instinctual. The bobcat didn't flinch. 10 feet apart, 2 species held a moment that neither wilderness nor human logic could explain. This wasn't ownership. It wasn't training. It was something ancient, shared. The kitten finished the meal. The mother turned, her tail twitching once, and disappeared into the trees, the little one hobbling after her, leaving twin trails in the dewy undergrowth. Emily remained kneeling, palms pressed to the wood, her breath shallow and ragged. Her chest felt tight, not with fear, but with something more bewildering. Permission. She had just been allowed into a secret. All the noise she had once lived in, the screech of city traffic, the ping of unread emails, the hollow conversations over drinks, felt like static now. She realized that in all her life, no one had looked at her the way that wild creature had, not with love, but with acknowledgement. She was no longer just a visitor in this forest. She had been seen. The sheriff arrived just after dusk, headlights raking across the snow-blown trees as his cruiser pulled up to Emily's cabin. He was a tall man in his late 50s, with silver stubble on his jaw and a clipboard in hand. Sheriff Malcolm Rourke didn't smile as he stepped out. He rarely did, but tonight his face was especially unreadable. Emily met him halfway down the path, clutching the wallet like a piece of radioactive evidence. "It was right there," she said, pointing toward the flat boulder near the edge of the woods. "This morning, I put food out last night, like I've been doing." Rourke took the wallet, inspecting the warped leather, flipping through the damp contents with gloved fingers. "Richard Haynes," he muttered. "We've had search crews up here for days. Not a trace." Emily nodded, arms wrapped around herself against the cold. "So how—" She trailed off, too embarrassed to finish the question. She didn't want to say it aloud, even though it clawed at the inside of her skull. Did the bobcat bring it? The sheriff looked toward the tree line, where the moonlight barely kissed the tops of the snow-covered branches. "You say this bobcat's been coming around regularly?" "For weeks now. Always at night. Sometimes I leave scraps, sometimes I don't. But she keeps showing up." Emily hesitated. "She's not afraid of me." Rourke stared at her in silence for a beat too long. Then, gently, You think the cat found this on a trail and brought it here? Like a what? A message? I don't know what to think, Emily replied, her voice low. But something about it felt intentional. They stood there, both listening to the wind shift through the trees. Somewhere in the distance, an owl called out, a lonely, echoing sound. Leave food again, Rourke said finally, scribbling something on his pad. Same spot, same time. If this is a fluke, it won't happen again. But if it's not... He didn't finish. He didn't need to. That night, after the cruiser's lights faded down the dirt road, Emily returned to the stone. She laid a slice of roast chicken on the rock, carefully, as though she were placing an offering on an altar. Then she stepped back into the shadows, heart pounding, waiting. And the woods for a while held their breath too. The thaw came late that year, dragging winter's edge into April like a stubborn curtain refusing to lift. Emily stayed in the cabin longer than she ever had in seasons past. The wood stove crackled day and night, fed by thick cords she'd split herself. She moved slower now, more deliberate, more watchful, not from fear, from something closer to reverence. The news hadn't named her directly, but people knew. Strangers had shown up once, their car idling awkwardly at the end of her drive, peering through binoculars toward the tree line. Tourists, probably, hoping to spot the grieving predator or the feral guardian, depending on which version of the story had reached them. She didn't go out. They didn't stay long. Inside, the wallet remained in a glass jar on her shelf, dried and cleaned. Not out of morbid curiosity, but because she didn't know where else it belonged. Richard's family had come and gone. Thankful. Hollow-eyed. A sister who clutched Emily's hand for a full minute and whispered, "He never went anywhere without that pack." But what haunted Emily wasn't the weight of loss. It was the detail. The impossibility of it. A wallet placed gently on a rock. A body not ravaged, but laid to rest with careful, even human-like intent. The Bobcat hadn't been tame. It hadn't approached her for touch or praise. It had simply acted, with purpose, with message. She began noticing other things. A raccoon's paw prints circling her garden fence, but no vegetables disturbed. A bird feeder knocked sideways during a storm, only to be upright again the next morning, not by wind. Once, after leaving her boots on the porch, she found them side by side, aligned perfectly, laces curled inward. Each time, she told herself it was chance, or her own forgetfulness. But deep down, she understood what had changed. The woods were watching her now, not as a trespasser, but as someone initiated. The Bobcat hadn't returned since that last night. Still, she looked every morning. She'd never see it the same way again, not just as an animal, but as a message, a reminder that some debts are repaid in silence, that not all mysteries come with threats. Some come with grace, and some with impossible respect. The cabin was already hollow with the echo of absence. Dust motes floated in angled beams of morning light, dancing lazily through the open window where the scent of pine crept in. Emily's suitcase stood by the door, half-zipped. A pair of wool socks poked out like a reluctant goodbye, but she couldn't leave, not just yet. She slipped on her old flannel and stepped into the dew-slicked clearing. The snow was gone, replaced by shoots of green bursting from beneath wet earth. Spring was here, but it didn't feel like a beginning. It felt like something sacred was ending. Her boots pressed softly into the mossy path, each step deliberate, quiet, reverent. She reached the edge of the woods, the place where it all began. The place where she first laid out scraps of meat, half mocking her own desperation, half praying for something she didn't dare name. And then, motion. Not loud, not dramatic, just the low ripple of branches moving where no wind stirred. The Bobcat stepped forward, He was bigger now, stronger. His coat had darkened into deep amber streaked with shadows, his eyes, golden and sharp, locked with hers across the clearing. Not wild, not tame, something else entirely. Emily didn't move, didn't speak. She simply pressed her palm to her chest, fingers splayed just over her heart. A gesture of thanks, of closure, of something more than words could carry. The bobcat stared, unblinking, and then, there, a nod. Not imagined, not misunderstood. A low, solemn bow of his head, just once, before he turned and melted back into the forest like mist rolling off a riverbank. Emily stood, frozen. Not from fear, but from awe. She was a scientist by trade, a realist by temperament. But something in that moment unraveled her certainty. Later, she sat at the cabin's worn table and wrote. She wrote not to explain, but to remember. Her essay wasn't a report. It was a whisper into the unknown, a breadcrumb for anyone who'd ever felt small and unseen and still chose to show up with a scrap of food and a flicker of hope. The wild thing that returned a name was published quietly, without fanfare. But the world found it, shared it, clung to it. Not because it made sense, but because it didn't have to. It reminded people, if only for a moment, that wonder still had a place, that magic could be quiet, and that kindness, no matter how small, was never wasted.